Ubisoft's The Division was an online action RPG with unexpected resonance in 2016, combining an authentic but fascinatingly eerie Manhattan with a cohesive co-op experience and an addictive gameplay loop. While it was supported and improved with 2 years of patches and fresh content, I can safely say The Division 2 has hit the ground running and is a vastly superior experience to its predecessor at launch. Most of the improvements are small, but they accumulate to make this much more than just a fresh coat of paint. Even after spending 50 plus hours running around this dystopian Washington DC with my friends and grinding through wave after wave of armed psychopaths, I'm still pumped to dig deeper into the endgame and the new upcoming Division 2 content from Ubisoft studio Massive Entertainment. If you played the original Division 3 years ago, you should already know that a plague of chemical warfare was unleashed on Black Friday, bringing the US into national turmoil and violent chaos. Sleeper agents of the strategic Homeland Division are the last line of defense and the only hope to maintain order against the uprising of hostile military groups jousting for control. Several months have passed since the Division 2's predecessor, which becomes evident in the careful details of the new Washington DC setting. Civilian communities have established and rebuilt in the ruins of the old world, attempting to restore normalcy to a society desperate for survival. The ancillary story of The Division 2 never really impresses beyond the core concept of the game, making the experience far more important than the narrative itself. The silent protagonist and freedom to pick your own path make cohesive storytelling an afterthought. But if you want to dig into the lore, there are plenty of audio recordings to pad out the story, including the return of salvaged phone calls and holographic echoes in the form of collectibles, each offering a dire glimpse into the past. On the other hand, if you don't care and just want to get to the killing bad guys part, the story is easy enough to ignore altogether. Despite its shared world point of difference, The Division 2 has maintained the tried and true Ubisoft formula of filling an open world map with dozens of seamless optional side quests, collectibles, capture points, NPC patrols, bounties, safe houses, and the addition of some new random events. This ensures that exploration rewards you with more than just filler. It's totally up to the player to decide the order they approach each activity, striking your own preferred balance between upgrading settlements, progressing through the story, or searching for loot to improve your loadout with better gear. Aside from the obvious respawning, fast travel, and joining another player's game, there's almost not a loading screen to be seen in The Division 2. And this might not sound like a big deal, but it really is a refreshing change from some recent AAA competition. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it. Anthem. It's way better than Anthem, okay? Moving on. The Division 2's methodical combat feels great, and every weapon is satisfying to use, which allows for a really easy switch if you decide to venture away from your preferred loadout. The enemy's bullet sponginess has certainly been fine-tuned compared to how The Division played at launch, and special abilities now have a variety of options to mix up combat. Individual enemies are essentially faceless, but the variety between factions is enough to keep battles interesting through the many hours of firing from cover. A range of AI behaviours and unique set pieces encourage different tactics, making this far more than a shooting gallery. The recorded dialogue for enemies is fantastic, as they react verbally to almost everything you do, alerting their squad when you're healing, hurling abuse at Division agents, and panicking out loud as they reload in battle or lose a friend in the firefight. While some might prefer to save DC as a lone hero, the co-op experience feels like the way The Division 2 is meant to be played. You're never forced to join others, but teaming up does make encounters more interesting as you plot together to take down enemy waves and use each other's strengths, unique abilities, or loadouts to your advantage. Enemies are scaled to match the player with the highest level, but the rest of your squad receives a stat buff to make sure missions are still playable. This works quite well and takes away any incompatibility issues between friends who want to play together. The only downside is the more inexperienced players seem to take greater damage, which is likely a result of their lower level armor and abilities. Unlike other games in this genre, single player is a perfectly viable way to enjoy The Division 2. Navigating this map can become an experiment in exploration as you venture away from the GPS directions, taking your time to discover shortcuts through buildings and underground infrastructure filled with loot. I was skeptical when I heard the endgame of The Division 2 was the point where it became really interesting, and I think anyone who says that really is all about the grind for better gear. I'm not that type of player, and typically I put down a game after the story is complete, but the endgame does enough to keep you interested with access to specialization skills, harder difficulties, and a greater focus on adventures in the Dark Zone. This PvP area was a key element of The Division, and it's back in the sequel to explore for the game's best loot, at the risk of losing it all from a rogue agent who wants to ruin your day. The Dark Zone levels the playing field between players and introduces the excitement of some new gameplay dynamics that you can't experience anywhere else in The Division 2. Washington's varied environment and set-piece design certainly stand out in the campaign, but there's nothing graphically here to truly blow you away. Texture pop-in is a noticeable side effect of processing such a large and seamless game world on the PS4, and The Division 2 is one of the worst offenders I can recall. Like, that is a weird thing to paint on a okay, yeah, I see it. Sure, okay. If you're a stickler for presentation, you could be bothered by the blurry signs and posters popping in everywhere you look, but on the plus side, I didn't experience a single frame rate issue in my 50 plus hours, and I suspect the processing priorities are the reason why. Character models are a little below the typical standard of AAA polish from Ubisoft, sometimes looking like animated mannequins, and some textures just look unfinished. I don't know about you, but to me this chemical foam looks more like a buffalo diarrhea dump. On a more positive note, anything The Division 2 lacks in graphical fidelity, it makes up with attention to detail. Each location is brimming with visual minutiae to create a lifelike and authentic feeling world, whether it's trash and graffiti or upturned furniture and abandoned equipment scattered across the streets. A game as big as The Division 2 isn't without its weird glitches. They're mostly audio and visual here, but I did experience occasional crashes or quest bugs as well. I even found what appears to be a portal into another dimension, hidden behind a garage door. However, each glitch I encountered was either forgivable, eventually patched, or worked around without major disruptions to my game progress. I was a little bummed out that the apparel loot drops seem far less frequent this time around, pushing players towards spending real-life currency, which is disappointing if you're really into character customization. But this is a fairly minor gripe in a fantastic game that has very little to complain about. The Division 2 is a superb shared world shooter and sets a high bar for games as a service. With the experience of 8-player raids and free DLC yet to come, I'll definitely be returning throughout the year with high expectations for what Massive Entertainment has in store for agents and rogues alike. For more video game coverage, hit that subscribe button and keep your eyes on 8bit.net.